Hello, everybody. This is Anthony for Investors Underground. Today, I have an opportunity to get to sit down and speak with one of the exceptional members of the Investors Underground community, Mr. Nick Kasnett. After studying finance in university, Nick eventually became a financial advisor, managing portfolios for clients for several years. Eventually, Nick took the leap and began trading for himself and has found success. In addition, Nick does an excellent job sharing his trading ideas live for other members of the Investors Underground community. You could follow him on Twitter at Kafir Capital and on Instagram. Hello, Nick. Thank you for being here and for taking the time to speak with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Nick, I'd love to start by just asking, how did you first get interested in stocks and trading?
Well, I actually always wanted to be a veterinarian growing up. And after I got back from the military, I started even going to university for it. But along the way, I met a friend who introduced me to Tim Sykes. And I ended up joining his chat room for a while. And if there's anything I can say, he really taught me the fundamentals of trading. And I eventually moved on to other chat rooms and got better education. But he really did, I would say, give me some of the most important advice that I needed to hear at that time, which was the only way to truly learn how to trade is just to dive right in head first. Don't be afraid to make mistakes because you will. It's inevitable, but you're not going to learn how to trade from any guru, from any book, from any movie, YouTube channel. You're going to learn how to trade by trading.
Every new trader sort of goes through their own path and faces bumps in the road. So,
Yeah.
for you, was there anything in particular that you struggled with early on as a trader?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, some of the early lessons that I learned in my trading journey was that the market is always right, despite your biases. The market can remain irrational far longer than you can remain solvent. And the biggest lesson here, I think, is really risk management, and that's tough in the beginning. And it takes hours and hours and hours of screen time just to kind of get familiar with different stocks and get an education, really.
How long did it take you when you first started trading to sort of get momentum and success and find that you were becoming more consistently profitable?
Yeah, I've been trading now for 4 years full time, and I think really what changed for me was something really just clicked one day, and I started becoming more comfortable taking losses, knowing that that's a part of the game, and I can come back tomorrow, new slate, new buying power, fresh bias or no bias really, and you know, take every day fresh.
What were some of the resources that had the greatest impact on you in terms of learning how to trade?
I would say some of the greatest resources have obviously been, our community, our Investors Underground community. That's been tremendous for me. Um, but there's other things that I use to go over my trades, analyze my trades, and really fine tune my strategy. So what I typically do is, at the end of every trading day, I'll upload all of my trades to TraderView, which is a platform that can track all that stuff. And every night I go over all my trades, winners, losers, what I did right, what went wrong, what I can do better. Um, I also use DAS's recorder software. If there's any stock in particular that I'm watching that's moving, and I really want to read the tape and study it, then I can record what's happening and then go back later and you know discover different patterns and why the stock did what it did.
And do you find that if a certain stock that you're familiar with is trading a little bit differently, that watching the tape sort of you're able to get a better sense on what might be different about it compared to someone who might just, you know, be looking at a stock for the first time? If you're more familiar with a stock, you might have a better sense of what is different about it on this particular day or with a different news catalyst. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. I think a lot of traders, they see something moving, with volume, momentum in the morning, and they just jump right in. They don't know what the company does or why it's moving. So I think familiarity with companies, it gives you an edge right away, because you know what you're trading, and it keeps you away, I think, from a lot of the wild moves that happen every day. So I typically don't like to trade those, those crazy stocks that are up 100, 200% on the day, the shiny object, so to speak. Um, I'll wait a few days, wait for them to settle, wait for other traders to figure it out. And then I'll come in and, you know, see where it's at.
Yeah. And since we're sort of on the topic of, your trading and your trading style, I'd love to learn a little bit more about it. What type of stocks or maybe, industries are you most interested in trading? And what types of setups interest you the most?
I would say that I'm more of a momentum trader with a focus to the short side. Um, I typically trade a range of small cap to large caps. I try to avoid OTCs and sub pennies. Again, I like to trade what I'm familiar with. So, if that's something like AMD or Tesla or Amazon, or it can be a small cap like AMC or GME. Um, but these are companies that I'm familiar with that I watch every day, and yeah, that's really my trading style. I try not to spread myself too thin, focus on a few names. But I definitely do have a focus to the short side. I've always been more contrarian.
And is there anything in particular that gets you really, really interested that you see happening when a stock is moving that really gets your attention to make you want to get into a trade?
Yeah, if I see a stock that's going parabolic, if I see, you know, crappy companies just putting out fake PRs, like those are things that I look for, especially if I'm short selling. But there's a lot of mispricement in the market to the downside and the upside. So again, the edge is really screen time and knowing what the overextension is to the upside and downside, and that gives you real insight into what a stock's next move is.
How are you looking to improve and adapt your trading? We've seen a couple different types of markets in the last couple years. So, how has your trading edge and your style adapted and changed?
Several ways. Listen, I mean, I've been trading for about 10 years, 4 years full time, and I've gone through everything. I've gone through a few account blowups, but we really learn from our successes and gains, but we learn for some reason, we learn everything about our losses and our failures. So it's important to fail, and that's how you learn.
I know that you've done some work as a financial advisor. Can you maybe talk about what that experience was like and how it differs from trading?
Definitely. I mean, I think that trading clients' capital is always very stressful for me because I always thought of it as kind of a lose lose. If you make money for clients, great. That's what they're paying you to do. But if I lose some money for them, that can really damage a relationship. So I really always just prefer to trade my own capital.
Yeah, I could imagine it's a whole different sort of
Oh,
perspective,
yeah.
having to deal with losing a trade and then having to explain that to somebody. It's
Oh,
hard
yeah.
enough to trade and lose money as a retail trader.
Totally. Totally. So I think, accountability is a huge thing there. Like, I think for investors that are trying to transition over to trading, there's a few things that come to mind. Like you really have to focus on technicals over fundamentals. You have to focus on a way shorter time horizon because investors obviously have a 5, 10+ year time horizon, but retail traders can't do that. It's a much shorter time frame generally, and you really need to stay on top of your portfolio, manage it, manage your risk. You don't have that flexibility that an investor does, where they can be okay with the drawdowns. They can even dollar cost average, and I actually think that's a good strategy if you're a long-term investor. But if you're trying to make the transition, you really have to know, and I say this all the time, but if you're entering a trade, then trade it. And if you're entering an investment, let it be an investment. And I think that that's a big problem with a lot of amateur traders is they hold on to their losers, they cut their winners too quickly. So just when you enter a trade, have a plan.
And you know, what was some of the biggest or most influential, most impactful experiences in your life that led you to being a successful trader? Was it studying finance in university? Were there other experiences after that or before then that had an impact on you?
Definitely. I mean, I think, working in the finance industry and banking industry definitely gave me, great insight into, the industry itself. It gave me great insight into, the differences between investing and trading. And, I think coming out of the military helped me tremendously just in terms of discipline and patience. Um, I was a sharpshooter, which required me to stay unmoving for long periods of time without ever losing focus on my target. And you have to really pick your spots carefully and wait for them to come into play. And I think that that's really translatable into trading. So I really try to pick my spots, be patient, um, and wait for setups to come to me. And I think that, that's definitely come from the military a little bit. Um, but I think it helps, having to have wake up at 3:30 a.m. every day. So it's kind of ingrained in me. I wake up early, and I don't think that you should be waking up and trading from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. But I do think that waking up early does give you an edge over everybody else that's still asleep. You know, so I think that's very important.
Yeah, that's a great point, and there's a number of things there that you mentioned that I think can be absolutely transferable from military to trading. Patience being one of them, discipline, waking up early, doing the work, rather than just waking up, pressing some buttons, and hoping for the best. Yeah. And so, what does your routine look like now? What's the average, pre-market look like for you? Are you trading all day, sitting at your desk just for a small amount of time? What does that all look like?
Right. That's a great question. I think in the beginning of my career, I was glued. Like I was really focusing on screen time and learning, and there were a lot of ups and downs. I wasn't always in the right place to be doing it, and I wasn't doing it full time, so it was always kind of like half-assed in a sense. But it's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done. My process is really just I wake up at 4:30 every morning, work out, breakfast, get my day started by 5:36. I'm at my computer, setting up my watch list for the day because that always changes overnight. So I'm really just for preparing a watch list, preparing for the day to come. But I really, over the years, as I've become more consistently profitable, I've tried to take a step back, travel more, spend more time away from the screens. And, I think that's very important. It's very important to keep a clear mental state while you're trading and not just be so bogged down all the time by numbers and, flashing screens to the point where you're dreaming about it. So yeah, taking time off is very important. And I try to do that as much as I can.
And is there anything in particular that you have found when you're away from your screen that you do or that you can do that helps you as a trader and transfers over to when you're actually at your desk?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to, be away from my computer and constantly having to check my phone and, what's this stock doing? What's my positions doing? So, if I want to go for a hike in the morning, let's say, I'll close out my positions, I'll go for a hike, come back later in the day. Um, it's as simple as that. You have to create time for yourself. Otherwise, this job will take everything from you. It's draining. It can be really draining, but you have to take care of yourself, and having a clear mental state of mind is key.
That's important, I think, and a great point. There tends to be sort of a perspective sometimes in the world of trading that it's money never sleeps, hustle, hustle, work all the time.
Yep,
But that could definitely lead to burnout. And you've taken, it sounds like, a much more balanced perspective, and you're still finding success in the market. And so, what are some of the things, in addition to what you had just mentioned, what are some of the things that you think, contributed to your amount of success in the markets?
again, I think putting in the time, putting in the time, but I think I hit a point in my career where I was able to see things differently and react quicker. Um, I've been trading for about 10 years, and experience is huge, but survival is everything. And you need to protect your capital so that you can stay in the game. And traders fail because they run out of capital. So longevity in this industry, I think, is the most important factor. Can you keep your chips long enough to get that education that you need? So again, just trading what I'm familiar with and having the experience that I've had. Obviously, being a short seller this year has been has been profitable for me. But yeah, it's you really just have to put in the time and be willing to learn, willing to also adapt because the market's always changing. And you have to be able to adapt with the market on a dime.
Absolutely. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, the idea of win rates and managing losses. I know for a lot of traders, particularly for newer traders, it might be hard to cut a trade and take a loss. And as you're mentioning, the importance of protecting your capital and staying in the game
Yeah.
being a key to success. So, what are your thoughts on being able to manage those losses? And do you have any advice for traders out there?
Definitely. I when I first started trading, I thought that win rate was everything. And for the first few years that I was trading, my win rate was 90%, which was crazy. That's obviously abnormal. But it got to the point where, you can win 9 out of 10 trades, but that one trade wipes out months and months of hard work. Um, so it's you really have to focus on consistency over win rate. I think that win rate now is not important at all. I think that you need to focus on small, consistent wins, and they will lead to large, consistent wins. And don't try to get rich quick and hit a home run on every trade, because you will get better over time. And as you make more money and your buying power increases, and as long as you keep your risk management in check, you'll grow your account exponentially. Um, but I saw an amazing stat on Twitter the other day by a well-respected trader, and he posted his gains, losses, and his win rate. And it blew my mind because his profit chart was basically parabolic. Like it was straight up. And his win rate was, I think, 45, 46%. And I mean, I think at first glance, if you would see somebody with that win rate, you'd be like, okay, they're losing more than they're winning. And that's the case with this trader. He is losing more than he's winning. But to me, the way that his graph looks and he's obviously crushing it, to me, that's amazing because this is somebody to me that almost enjoys taking losses and he clearly adds to his winners and lets them ride. And his losses just trump his losers. And I think that that's a human behavior that's extraordinarily hard to master. And it's something that I work on every day.
That's great. And what are some things that you do to stay consistent? And are there any practices or rules that you have about keeping your losses small and making sure that you don't have this, these outsized losers compared to the smaller winners?
Definitely. I think after blowing a few accounts early on in my career, I think setting a stop loss with your broker, a max stop loss, is so key for longevity in this industry because moves happen, without your control, and sometimes they're black swan events, and you can go bust in a matter of minutes if you don't have um, you know if you don't have those restrictions in place. So I do think that setting that stop loss with your broker is a great start. Um, but another thing that I've learned from my career in making mistakes and losing money is that most of my big losses have come from me, developing a bias or being over leveraged or all of that. So or swinging a losing position overnight. So I really try to cash up every day, just so that if I'm in the money, out of the money, if I take a loss, it doesn't matter. Losses don't mean much to me anymore because I know I have the ability to bounce back the next day. So that's something that's helped me tremendously in my trading career is that I'm okay with, being wrong every day because tomorrow's a new day. So I like to go in cashed up at the end of every day, wake up every morning with a clean slate, no bias. And who knows, maybe I can make double what I lost yesterday. But, to get caught up in losers and hold on to them, you'll eventually blow up.
I think that's great advice. And I wanted to dig a little bit into the topic of networking and
Yeah,
finding a community of traders. I know you from Investors Underground. And
right.
so, how important has Investors Underground and just having a general network of like minded traders been to you and your success?
Extremely, extremely. I would say, it's one of those jobs that's kind of lonely. It's kind of like coding in a sense where you're in front of a computer all day. You have very little human interaction. So I do think that having a community, having support system, somebody who you can talk to and just kind of shoot the shit about different stocks, somebody who can keep you in check, accountable. It's very important. Very important. Trying to do this solo is way harder.
Absolutely. Um, if it's okay with you, Nick, I'd love to go through sort of a lightning round set of questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Great. So, my first question is, what do you consider to be your greatest strength as a trader?
I would say my greatest strength as a trader would be patience and discipline.
Have you found that you learn more from your trades based on studying your biggest winners, your biggest losers, or is it a combination of the two?
I would say that, I think as humans, we are simply wired to feel our pains and losses more than our wins and successes, so we definitely learn more from making mistakes so as to not repeat them.
What do you believe is the biggest myth out there about trading?
This is one of my favorite questions. Um, I would say the biggest myth about trading is that it is gambling. I think that, a lot of people compare trading and it keeps them away from trading because they're like, it's straight gambling. You're trading against hedge funds and quants but at the end of the day, it's you versus you. And I think the biggest difference between day trading and gambling is, for example, if you place a bet on a sports team or a horse, you are locked into that bet regardless of the outcome, right? If I bet $100 on the Knicks winning a game, whether they win or lose, I make or lose $100. But it's regardless of the outcome, it's a zero-sum game. With stocks, yes, I can take a gamble on which direction it will move, but I can also exit that bet whenever I want at my own discretion. And I think that that's really the major difference. You can control your bet, and which makes it very different from other forms of gambling.
And what's one area of your trading that you would like to improve on?
I would love to get better at adding to winners and letting them ride. It's become easier and easier to cut losers, but adding to winners is difficult.
And is there one particular trade that stands out to you as being the most memorable, whether it was for with positive thoughts or because there's painful memories attached to it? Was there one particular trade or ticker?
Yeah, I would say that early on in my career, that would be Carvana. It led to one of my first ever blowups, shorting that company, and I developed a bias. And perhaps I was right in hindsight. I mean, the stock's trading at what, $7 right now? Like, perhaps I was right, but Nate talks about this, and it's all about being on the right side of the V. And I was simply on the wrong side of the V. And it's extremely important to recognize, when the stock is going like that, and then it starts going like that, which side of the V do you want to be on if you're short or if you're long? Um, so, never let your bias get the way of you, get the best of you, even though you know you're right.
I think that's great advice. And if you could go back to the early days when you first started trading and give yourself any piece of advice, what would it be? And do you think that you would have listened to yourself?
I do think I would have listened. I think that I would have told myself that, um, I would have told myself to be patient and stay disciplined. This is not a get rich quick type of game. Focus on consistency and profitability. Don't focus on win rate. And, you know, uh, just keep at it, keep at it, and don't let losses really destroy you, because I think that small consistent wins just leads to large consistent wins, and focus on consistency, not win rate.
Great. And speaking of those losses, after you've had a big loss, what do you do to recover mentally from something like that?
That's a great question. I know that, a lot of people kind of like to, you know, take a break, take a step back, clear their mind, um, and maybe take a vacation, whatever it is. For me, that's never been the case, and I understand that it is extremely important to, after taking a big loss and you're not in the right headspace, get back in the right headspace. I'm not saying don't, but for me, it's always been better for me to jump right back on the horse. I find that, if I take a big loss and I wait a little bit, I get in my own head, I start doubting myself, I get imposter syndrome. But if I jump right back in, I know that I have the ability to make money every single day. That's up to me. So hopefully I don't repeat the same mistake again. But I learned from my mistake, so I won't.
And are there any specific technical indicators that you use on your charts in order to get into a trade or that you use to help in profit taking?
Definitely. Yeah, I would say the most important for me would be VWAP, which is volume weighted average price. Um, that's really been my main technical indicator that I use intraday. Obviously, moving averages help for longer periods if you're swinging. But I would say VWAP is the most important for me.
Do you have any general advice for traders out there listening who are currently struggling or not profitable or feel like they're not living up to their expectations?
Definitely. I think again, the most important part of this game is longevity. And if you run out of capital, you're out. And I think that that's why most traders fail is because they just don't have the capital to continue their education. So my advice would be to take things slow. Don't, over leverage. Learn about risk management. Um, really just, be patient, learn and soak up as much knowledge as you can, but also spend time in front of the screen. Learn how to read tape because it's a language. And if you can learn that language, you have an advantage over a lot of people that don't. So, yeah, that would be my advice is really, you can do it. It's definitely an extraordinarily difficult job. A lot of people are not cut out for this, but it can be the most rewarding thing that you can do.
And for anybody out there who's interested in learning more about you or your trading style, how can they do so?
Yeah, via the chat room, Twitter, Instagram, I'm available and happy to offer any help or mentorship I can to this community.
Thank you so much, Nick. I
Of
really
course.
appreciate it. It's great to see you in person.
Yeah.
I know I see you in the chat room like so many others. So it's great to be able to put a
Yeah.
face to the name.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. I appreciate it.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. Thanks for watching.